I never thought I'd be the kind of person to take revenge. I mean, I was raised to be polite, to keep the peace, to be the bigger person. But sometimes, enough is enough. I'm Jake, 32, and I've been married to my wife, Emily, for 5 years. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but one consistent problem has always been her mother, Diane. She's the kind of person who expects the world to revolve around her, and when it doesn't, she makes sure everyone suffers for it. Now, I've put up with a lot over the years. Diane never thought I was good enough for Emily, always finding ways to criticize me. My job wasn't prestigious enough. My gifts were never thoughtful enough. I didn't call her often enough. You get the picture. But through it all, I tried to stay civil for Emily's sake. Then came the birthday fiasco. Diane was turning 60, and she decided she wanted a massive, extravagant party. I'm talking about a fancy venue, catered dinner, a live band, the whole 9 yards. And, of course, she assumed I'd pay for it. Not asked. Assumed. Emily and I were at her parents' house for dinner when she casually dropped it into the conversation. "I've been looking at venues," she said, swirling her glass as if she were some aristocrat in a period drama. "And I think the Grand Oak Ballroom would be just perfect for my party." The Grand Oak Ballroom. I knew the place. It was high-end, the kind of venue people booked for weddings. "That sounds fancy," I said carefully. "Oh, it is," Diane said with a smug smile. "But it's a milestone birthday, and I deserve something special." Then she turned to me and added, "Of course, you'll be taking care of the costs, Jake." "It's only fair." I nearly choked on my drink. "I'm sorry." "What?" Emily stiffened beside me. She knew how her mother could be, but even she looked taken aback. "Well," Diane continued, as if explaining something to a small child, "you're the man of the family. It's your responsibility to ensure I have a proper celebration. Besides, you have a good job. It's not like you can't afford it." Now, here's the thing. I do have a good job. I work in finance, and we live comfortably. But Diane? She had no idea what our finances actually looked like. Emily and I had been saving for a house. A big, lavish party for a woman who barely tolerated me was not part of the plan. I glanced at Emily, waiting for her to say something. To my relief, she did. "Mom," she said, her voice calm but firm. "That's not Jake's responsibility. If you want a big party, you need to pay for it yourself." Diane gasped as if Emily had just slapped her. "Excuse me." "You heard her," I said, now emboldened. "We're not in a position to drop that kind of money on a party. If you want something extravagant, maybe everyone in the family can pitch in. I shouldn't have to split the cost of my own birthday party." She snapped. "This is about showing appreciation for everything I've done. And as my son-in-law, it's your duty to step up." Her entitlement was astounding. I glanced around the room, half expecting someone to tell her she was being unreasonable. Emily's dad, Greg, was sitting in his usual spot, staring into his drink, clearly wanting no part of this. Emily's younger sister, Megan, was on her phone, pretending not to hear. This was normal for them. And that was when I realized Diane wasn't just expecting me to pay. She had already decided I would. I should have put my foot down right then and there, but I didn't want to cause a scene. Instead, I said, "I'll think about it," and changed the subject. That night, Emily and I had a long talk. She was just as frustrated as I was, but admitted she wasn't surprised. "She's always been like this," she sighed. "She assumes she's the queen, and we're all here to serve her." Still, we agreed we'd offer a compromise, maybe help with a portion of the cost or suggest a more reasonable party. The next morning, before I even had a chance to call Diane, I got a message from her. Diane texted, "I've booked the Grand Oak Ballroom for my birthday. They need a deposit by Friday. You can send the money to my account." I stared at my phone in disbelief. She hadn't waited for my answer. She had just decided. I showed the text to Emily, who let out a groan. "You have to tell her no." So I did. I called Diane and, as politely as I could, told her that we weren't paying for the party. Her reaction? Fury. "You're ungrateful," she spat. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" My own daughter married a selfish, stingy man. Then she hung up. For the next few days, Diane ignored both of us. Then, out of nowhere, she sent another message. Diane texted, "You don't have to pay for the whole thing. Just cover the catering and entertainment." That's fair. Fair? I ignored the text. Then, a week later, Emily and I were at her parents' house again for another family dinner. I had braced myself for the inevitable tension, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. Diane was in an unusually good mood, laughing and chatting as if nothing had happened. Then, midway through dinner, she said, "Oh, by the way, Jake, you're not invited to my party." Silence. I blinked. "What?" "You heard me," she said breezily, sipping her drink. "Since you clearly don't respect me enough to contribute, I don't want you there." "Emily, of course, you're still invited." Emily gaped at her. "Mom, you can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," Diane said, smiling sweetly. "It's my party. I decide the guest list." I sat there, staring at her, feeling a mix of shock, anger, and oddly relief. If she didn't want me there, fine. But the sheer audacity of banning me while still expecting me to pay? I glanced at Emily, who was fuming. Diane took another sip of her drink, looking entirely pleased with herself. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't just going to refuse to pay. I was going to make sure this party never happened. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile creeping onto my face as the first pieces of my plan started coming together. Diane had no idea what was coming. I didn't say a word for the rest of dinner. I just sat there, listening to Diane prattle on about how wonderful her party was going to be, how excited everyone was, how she had chosen the most exquisite decorations. She had no idea that in less than a week, everything was going to unravel. Emily was seething on the way home. "I can't believe her," she muttered, gripping the steering wheel like she was trying not to snap it in half. "She seriously thinks she can ban you and still expect you to pay?" "She does," I said, staring out the window. "And that's the problem." Emily sighed. "What are you thinking?" I turned to her, my mind already working out the details. "I'm thinking that if she wants to play games, I can play too." Now, here's the thing. Diane had never planned this party properly. She had made big demands and expected other people to handle the logistics. That's where I saw my opportunity. Step 1. I needed to know exactly what had been booked. Diane, being Diane, had bragged about every detail. She had secured the Grand Oak Ballroom for the venue. She had hired an expensive caterer that specialized in plated gourmet meals. She had booked a live jazz band and even a professional photographer to capture her grand evening. And every single one of those things required a deposit. A deposit I knew for a fact hadn't been paid yet, because she had expected me to pay it. I waited until the next morning to make my move. First, I called the Grand Oak Ballroom. "Hi," I said, adopting my most professional tone. "I'm calling on behalf of Diane. She recently booked an event with you, but we need to make a few changes." The receptionist, a polite woman named Linda, pulled up the reservation. "Yes, we have her down for Saturday evening." "That's correct," I said. "Unfortunately, we're going to need to cancel the reservation." There was a pause. "I see. Well, we haven't received the deposit yet, so that won't be an issue." "Perfect." Linda then informed me that since no contract had been signed and no payment had been made, the ballroom would simply release the date for other bookings. Just like that, Diane's venue was gone. Next, I called the caterer. Same story. No deposit, no reservation. Canceled. Then the band. The photographer. Every single piece of Diane's perfect party? Gone. I could only imagine the chaos that was going to unfold when she found out. But I wasn't done yet. Diane had sent out invitations weeks ago, telling people to RSVP directly to her. But there was one key detail she had forgotten: the actual address of the venue. She had been so confident that everything would go according to her plan that she hadn't included it in the original invitations. Instead, she had promised to send the details closer to the date, which meant that, at this point, no one actually knew where the party was supposed to be. With the venue gone and no backup plan in place, Diane was about to face a nightmare of her own making. And I was just going to sit back and watch it unfold. 3 days before the party, Diane still had no idea what was coming. Emily and I had kept our distance, knowing that the moment she realized what had happened, the fallout would be nuclear. I was sitting on the couch, casually scrolling through my phone when Emily's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, sighed, and mouthed "Mom." "Here we go," she muttered before answering. The moment she said hello, Diane's voice blasted through the speaker so loudly I could hear every word. "Emily, we have a disaster. I just got off the phone with the Grand Oak Ballroom, and they said our reservation is gone. They gave the date to someone else." Emily gave me a quick look, and I just smirked. She put the phone on speaker. "Wait, what do you mean?" she asked, feigning surprise. "I mean someone canceled my reservation. And when I called the caterer, they said the same thing. And the band. And the photographer. Everything is gone. My party is ruined." I could practically hear the sound of Diane pacing frantically, probably waving her arms in the air as she ranted. This has to be a mistake, Emily said, still playing along. Did you sign a contract with them? Diane hesitated. Well, no, but I told them I was going to pay. I just hadn't sent the money yet because I was waiting for Jake to do it. Emily turned to me, raising an eyebrow. I took that as my cue to jump in. Oh, I said, trying to sound innocent. You were waiting for me to send the money? But I thought I wasn't invited to the party. Silence. A long, awkward silence. Then, Diane screeched, "This is your fault." My fault? I asked, barely holding back a laugh. You told me I wasn't welcome. Why would I pay for something I'm not even allowed to attend? You should have told me you weren't paying, she snapped. I did, I said flatly. 2 weeks ago. You just chose to ignore it. There was another pause, and then Diane switched tactics, her voice suddenly turning syrupy sweet. Jake, honey, she cooed, as if we hadn't just been yelling at each other. You know I didn't mean that. You're family, and family helps each other. I know we had a little misunderstanding, but there's still time to fix this. I leaned back, pretending to consider it. Oh, how exactly do you plan to fix it? Diane jumped on the opportunity. If you send the money today, I can try to book everything again. It might cost more at the last minute, but I'm sure we can make it work. I couldn't help but grin. She still thought she could manipulate me. Sorry, Diane, I said, stretching out the words. I would help, but you made it very clear that I'm not welcome at your party. So really, this isn't my problem. Her voice dropped into a furious whisper. You're being selfish. I shrugged. No, I'm setting boundaries. But hey, best of luck finding a new venue 3 days before the event. Then, before she could start screaming again, I hung up. Emily let out a long breath and tossed her phone onto the couch. Wow, she's panicking, I said, amused. She thought she had everything under control. She's not going to let this go, Emily warned. I knew she was right. Diane wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. She would fight tooth and nail to salvage this party, and if she couldn't, she'd find someone to blame. I had a feeling this wasn't over. I didn't hear anything from Diane for the rest of the day, which was unusual. Normally, when she didn't get her way, she'd keep hammering at the problem, calling everyone she could to force things back into her control. The silence meant one of two things. Either she was scrambling for a solution, or she was plotting something worse. Emily and I went about our evening as usual, but I had a nagging feeling in the back of my mind. Diane wasn't the type to just accept what had happened. She was stubborn, manipulative, and worst of all, she believed she was never wrong. And sure enough, the next morning, the chaos truly began. Emily's phone buzzed at 7 a.m., way too early for a casual chat. She groaned, reaching for it, but as soon as she saw the screen, her face twisted in annoyance. She's calling again. I sighed. Might as well see what disaster she's come up with now. Emily reluctantly answered and put it on speaker. Diane didn't even say hello. She was already mid-rant. I fixed it. We exchanged a glance. That was unexpected. Fixed what? Emily asked. The party. I found a new venue. It's not as nice as Grand Oak, but it'll do. And the best part? They still have availability for Saturday, but I had to put down a rush deposit to secure it. I frowned, already seeing where this was going. So, Diane continued, I need you to send me the money today. It's non-refundable, so we have to act fast. Emily exhaled sharply. Mom, you do realize that you're still asking Jake to pay for a party he's not invited to, right? Oh, stop being dramatic, Diane snapped. He's family. He's supposed to support us. I finally spoke up. Diane, let me get this straight. You lost your venue, your caterer, your band, and your photographer. You had to scramble for a last-minute replacement, and now you want me to pay for it? After banning me from attending? She scoffed. That was just a misunderstanding. Of course, you can come now. I almost laughed out loud. So now that you need my money, suddenly I'm welcome again? Diane hesitated, then her voice softened into what she probably thought was charm. Jake, sweetheart, you know I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I was just trying to keep things intimate. But since you're so worried about it, of course, you're invited. In fact, I insist. I had to give her credit for the effort, but I wasn't buying it. You know what's funny? I said, keeping my voice light. The only reason you even need a new venue is because you never secured the first one properly. If you had just paid your own deposit, none of this would be happening. Diane's tone turned icy. So, are you going to send the money or not? I smiled. Not. She let out an exaggerated gasp, as if I had just slapped her. You're really going to be this selfish? Do you know how embarrassing this is for me? People are expecting an elegant event, not some last-minute thrown-together disaster. Then you probably should have planned it better, I said, unable to hide my amusement. Diane lost it. She started shrieking about how I was ruining everything, how I was a terrible son-in-law, how I was disrespecting her after everything she had done for me, which, to be clear, was absolutely nothing. Emily finally had enough. Mom, Jake is not paying. And if you keep acting like this, I don't even know if I want to come. That shut Diane up for a moment. Then, in a voice dripping with pure venom, she spat, "Fine. I don't need your money. But don't expect to be welcome in this family anymore." Emily scoffed. "That's rich, considering you were the one who uninvited us." And with that, Emily hung up. For a few seconds, we just sat there in stunned silence. Then I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. "Well," I said, stretching my arms. "That went well." Emily let out a short laugh. "I give it 2 hours before she calls back with some new demand." She was wrong. Diane didn't call back in 2 hours. She called back in 10 minutes. But this time, she wasn't just screaming at us. She had an entire new plan. And somehow, it was even worse. When Diane called back just 10 minutes later, I almost didn't answer. I figured it was just going to be another round of yelling, guilt-tripping, and emotional manipulation. But something told me to pick up. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the sheer insanity of it all. Either way, I swiped to answer and put her on speaker. Her voice was eerily calm, like she had spent the past 10 minutes convincing herself she had found the perfect way to force my hand. "Jake, I've thought about it, and I realize now that you might not have understood how important this is to me. This party isn't just about me. It's about family. It's about all of us coming together to celebrate. And I don't want there to be any hatred between us. So, I have a compromise." I leaned back, amused. "Oh yeah? What kind of compromise?" "You pay for the party," she said smoothly, "and in return, you get to attend." I nearly choked on my own laughter. "Oh, so generous. You'll allow me to come to the event that I'm funding? How kind." Diane sighed dramatically, like I was being difficult on purpose. "Jake, this is an amazing deal. I know you were upset about being left out before, but I'm giving you the opportunity to be part of something special." I could almost hear Emily gritting her teeth beside me. "Mom, do you even hear yourself?" She snapped. "You're acting like you're doing him a favor when you're still demanding thousands of dollars for a party that you planned for your birthday. This isn't a negotiation. He's not paying." Diane's fake patience snapped instantly. "Then I guess you two don't care about this family at all. I guess you just want to be selfish and petty and ruin my big day because you can't handle the fact that sometimes we make sacrifices for the people we love." I shook my head. "Diane, love doesn't mean throwing money at your ridiculous demands. You didn't even ask me if I was willing to contribute. You demanded it. And then when I didn't immediately comply, you tried to ban me from the event I was supposed to pay for. That's not love. That's entitlement." For a moment, there was silence. "Well," she said coldly, "since you refused to do the right thing, I had to find another solution. So I asked around, and I found someone else willing to cover the cost." Emily stiffened beside me. "Who?" Diane's next words made my stomach drop. "Your father." Emily's face went pale. "Wait, what?" "Oh, yes," Diane said, her smugness back in full force. "I explained the situation to him, and he was horrified that you two would treat me this way. He said it was disgraceful, that a son-in-law should respect his elders, and that if you two weren't going to support this family, he would." Emily clenched her jaw. "Mom, Dad doesn't even like you." Diane scoffed. "Well, he must care enough to pay for my party." I ran a hand down my face. This was insane. Emily's parents had been divorced for years, and they barely tolerated each other. For Diane to have convinced her ex-husband to pay for this party meant she had spun a sob story. Emily was furious. "You manipulated him, didn't you? What did you tell him? That we left you destitute? That we were out here blowing money while you suffered?" Diane sniffed. "I simply told him the truth. That my ungrateful daughter and her husband refused to be part of this family's traditions and that I had no choice but to ask for his help. And unlike you two, he actually came through for me." I exhaled slowly. "Diane, you do realize what this means, right?" "What?" she asked, clearly expecting me to be jealous or regretful. "It means you have your money," I said. "It means your party is happening." "Yes," she said triumphantly. "Exactly." I smirked. "And it means you officially have no reason to contact me ever again." Silence. Then, "Excuse me. You made your choice," I said. "You found someone else to fund your nonsense. So now you don't need me, And that means I don't need to put up with you anymore. Have a great party, Diane. I won't be there. Emily nodded, her voice hard. Neither will I. Diane lost it. She started screaming about how we were ungrateful, how we were punishing her for simply wanting a nice party, how we were abandoning her when all she wanted was to be surrounded by family. But we weren't listening anymore. Emily reached over and hung up. And just like that, it was over. The aftermath was, honestly, hilarious. Apparently, after her dramatic victory call to us, Diane had gone back to the new venue to confirm everything, only to find out that the generous contribution from Emily's dad wasn't as big as she had implied. He had covered some of the costs, but not all of them. And when Diane realized she still owed money to finalize things, she had a full meltdown at the venue, demanding they lower the price. They refused. She threatened to sue. They laughed at her. In the end, Diane had to downgrade everything. She lost the fancy decorations, the expensive catering, and the live band. The party still happened, but instead of the extravagant event she had envisioned, it was a low-budget mess in a half-empty banquet hall. And the best part? Most of the guests didn't even show up. Word had spread that Diane had tried to ban her own son-in-law from the party after demanding he pay for it, and people weren't exactly eager to celebrate someone who acted like that. The turnout was embarrassingly small, and according to my sources, because, of course, there were sources, Diane spent most of the night sulking at a table, furious that her big moment had been ruined. Meanwhile, Emily and I spent that evening relaxing at home, ordering takeout, and watching a movie without a care in the world. Honestly, best decision ever. Diane hasn't spoken to us since, which is honestly a blessing. Emily's dad eventually realized he had been manipulated, and though he was annoyed about losing money, even he admitted that it was worth it just to see Diane suffer the consequences of her own entitlement. So yeah, that's the story of how my mother-in-law tried to ban me from a party she expected me to pay for, only to end up humiliated in the end. I have zero regrets. But what do you guys think? Did I handle this the right way? Or should I have done something differently? I'd love to hear your thoughts. My name's Julian, I'm 32, and if you asked anyone in my family, they'd probably say I'm the successful one, not in a braggy way. I'm not a millionaire or a genius or anything, but I've worked hard, stayed out of trouble, built my own tech consulting firm from scratch, and yeah, I make a decent living. More than decent, I guess, compared to the rest of my extended family. That difference has always been there, quiet and slightly uncomfortable, but manageable. Until recently, it started with a casual favor, or what seemed like one at the time. My cousin Marissa, who's a year younger than me and has never really held down a job longer than 6 months, came over for dinner a few months back. She was charming, sweet, and full of stories about how she was trying to get her life together. Said she was applying for jobs, getting her certifications, all that. We talked, laughed, and somewhere between the lasagna and dessert, she asked if I could help her out, just temporarily, with a credit card. I don't need much, she said, brushing her hair behind her ear like it was no big deal. Just some groceries and gas. I'll pay you back next month. Promise. I hesitated. I really did. But I had a backup credit card I rarely used, with a modest limit I figured wouldn't be too dangerous. I thought about putting her on a prepaid one or something, but she looked genuinely embarrassed even asking, and I didn't want to make it feel like a big thing. So I handed it over with a gentle, just be careful with it. Emergencies only. I know. Rookie mistake. At first, things seemed fine. A couple charges at the grocery store, a few at the gas station. $45 here, $70 there. Nothing too wild. I even told myself I'd probably forget about the whole thing by next month. She'd give it back, I'd cut it up, the end. But then, the charges changed. Week 2, I saw a $185 charge from a spa in Westwood. I raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. Maybe she needed a break. Week 3, $320 at a concert venue. Some artist I'd never heard of. Week 4, $870 at a designer boutique downtown. I stared at the statement for a long time, not quite believing it. Then came $1,200 to some travel agency and a $200 Uber bill on the same day. I called her immediately. Oh, come on, she said, half laughing. You're not really upset, are you? I mean, you said you had room on it. It's not like I bought a car or something. I didn't know how to respond. I was so stunned by how casual she sounded, how dismissive, like I was overreacting for even asking. Marissa, I said, trying to stay calm. This wasn't the deal. You said groceries. Gas. Well, yeah. She snapped back, her tone shifting. But things came up. I've been stressed. And honestly, you make so much, Julian. It's not even a big deal for you, is it? That line, that exact sentence. It's not even a big deal for you. It echoed in my head for the rest of the day, and it only got worse. I spoke to my mom about it later that evening, just venting really. She and Marissa's mom, my aunt, have always been close, so I figured she'd understand. But instead, my mom sided with her. Well, Jules, she said gently, you do make good money. Maybe this is just your way of helping out. You always say you want to give back. Giving back is not the same as being used like an ATM. I didn't say much after that, just nodded and hung up the call. But my stomach twisted. My pulse pounded. I felt like I was drowning in this weird family narrative where my financial stability meant I wasn't allowed to set boundaries, where anything I had was fair game for others, because I had it. I went back through the credit card statement, this time carefully. The total, for $1,280. Gone. And not 1 cent was groceries or gas anymore. That night, I locked the card, flagged every suspicious transaction, requested a fraud investigation. And then I waited. It didn't take long. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed texts. The last one, from my sister Cara, just said, "What did you do? Marissa's card is dead." I didn't reply. An hour later, my phone lit up again, this time with a screenshot from Marissa herself. It showed a declined payment from a luxury spa. Then the real messages started rolling in. Marissa, why is nothing going through? My mom, Julian, what's happening? Marissa says her card's broken. My aunt, did you do something to embarrass Marissa? She was trying to get her hair done before a big interview. I replied to none of them, except one. To Marissa, I wrote back simply, because I'm not your wallet. After that, silence. Not just from her, from everyone. The group chat, usually a chaotic flood of memes, chain messages, and passive-aggressive jokes, went dead quiet. No one responded. No one said a word. For hours. And then, just before lunch, my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a courier holding a certified envelope. The return address? My aunt's name. I signed for it, shut the door, and tore it open. Inside, one piece of paper. Typed. No greeting, no sign-off. Just one sentence. We need to talk. I stared at it, my hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from anger and confusion, and maybe a bit of sadness too. Because deep down, I was starting to realize this wasn't about a credit card. It was about entitlement. And I had just drawn a line in the sand they never expected me to draw. I sat with that letter in my hand for what felt like an hour, just staring at those 4 words. We need to talk. Not sorry. Not let's make this right. Just a vague summons, like I was expected to come crawling to explain myself. Like I was the one who had overstepped. But for once, I didn't jump. I didn't call back. I didn't reply to the dozens of unread messages that were now stacking up on my phone. I just poured myself a coffee, opened my laptop, and went back to work. The truth was, I'd always been the peacemaker in our family. The fixer. When my sister Cara got pregnant at 19 and our parents were freaking out, I paid the hospital bills and helped her get back on her feet. When my mom's car broke down 2 winters ago, I bought her a new one without making it a big deal. I never expected applause. I just wanted to keep everyone afloat. But this, what Marissa did, wasn't someone struggling asking for help. It was someone expecting it, demanding it, abusing it. That weekend, I drove out to see my dad. He and my mom split years ago, and he lives in a quiet suburb about 2 hours from the city. He's always been a bit of a loner, kind of the black sheep of his own family, so I figured he might see things differently. I didn't even finish the full story before he leaned back in his recliner, arms folded, and said, "You should have cut them off a long time ago." I laughed a little. "Gee, thanks, Dad. I mean it," he said. "You've got a good heart, Jules, but they see that as a weakness. They don't respect you. They just expect you. Big difference." It hit harder than I thought it would. He poured us both a drink and sat across from me. "You're not their father. You're not a bank. And if they're mad that you pulled the plug, good. That means it worked." When I left his house that night, I felt lighter and strangely more resolved. But of course, things didn't stay quiet for long. The next Monday, I walked into my office to find a stack of pink envelopes on my desk. Birthday cards, late holiday cards, a thank you note from a client, and one from my aunt. Not an email, not a text, an actual handwritten card. the kind with glittery cursive and a weird baby angel on the front. Inside was a mess of scribbled, guilt-tripping nonsense. I raised Marissa like she was my own. You knew what she was going through. This whole thing has caused her so much emotional distress. And then, in all caps, she's family. As if that erased everything. As if the word family was a magic spell that made debt disappear and trust rebuild itself. I tossed the card in a drawer and closed it. The next day, my sister Kara called. At first, she was calm. Pleasant even. Hey Jules, listen. I wanted to talk about everything. I know things got a little out of hand, but maybe we can find a way to. I cut her off. Did you know? She paused. Know what? That Marissa was using the card. For spas. For shopping. For concert tickets. Another pause. Then, she told me a little. I thought you were okay with it. I let out a slow breath, my hands tightening around the phone. Kara, I was never okay with it. And the fact that you thought I'd be fine with that kind of spending tells me everything I need to know. That's when she snapped. Oh, come on, Julian. You act like you're some poor victim here. You gave her the card. You always do this. You give people things, and then you hold it over their heads. I blinked, stunned. What? You just want everyone to need you, she said, her voice sharp now. That way you can feel important. That's why you do it. Admit it. I hung up. I didn't slam the phone down. I didn't yell. I just quietly ended the call and sat there in my chair, feeling something in me shift. It wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. I pulled up my banking app, scrolled through the linked accounts, and one by one, started removing authorized users. No more shared cards. No more payment plans for emergencies. No more monthly transfers to anyone but myself. Then I made one final move. I contacted my lawyer. See, a couple years ago, I set up a small family trust after selling a portion of my company. Nothing massive, but enough to cover college funds for the younger cousins or help someone out in case of a real crisis. I was listed as sole trustee. No one else had access, but they knew it existed, and they counted on it. Every time someone slipped up, lost a job, crashed a car, needed just a little help, they'd hint at the trust. They'd whisper to each other about how Julian would take care of it. Julian always did. Well, not anymore. I had the trust frozen, effective immediately. Every future disbursement suspended. My lawyer drafted a formal letter and mailed it to every family member who'd ever benefited from it. No explanation, just a clean legal notification. The fallout came fast. Marissa messaged me at 2 a.m. Did you shut down the trust? What is going on? My mom called 4 times that morning. I didn't answer. Then the group chat lit up like fireworks on the 4th of July. What's your problem, Julian? This is so extreme. We're your family, not leeches. You're punishing everyone for Marissa's mistake. I didn't respond. And then, finally, just as things started to go quiet again, my doorbell rang. This time, no courier. No envelope. Just my aunt, standing there on my front porch. Her lips pressed tight, her eyes red, clutching something in her hands. I opened the door slowly. She held up the trust letter. We need to talk, she said, repeating the words from before. But this time, her voice cracked. I stood there, not moving, the cool air between us growing heavy. And just as I was about to speak, someone stepped out from the car parked at the curb. It wasn't Marissa. It wasn't my sister. It was someone I hadn't seen in years. And the moment I recognized their face, everything shifted again. Because they weren't here to talk. They were here to settle something much bigger. It took me a few seconds to register who it was. At first, the figure stepping out of the car looked like just another bystander, tall, wearing a dark coat, sunglasses despite the cloud cover. But then he took off the shades and gave a small, unreadable nod. Eli Navarro. That name probably means nothing to most people, but in my family, he was practically folklore. Eli was my cousin on my dad's side, a second cousin technically, but growing up, he felt like more of a ghost than a relative. He was 5 years older, impossibly smart, quiet, always the one who disappeared from family events after 10 minutes and never explained why. When I was a teenager, I overheard someone whisper that Eli had walked away from a 7-figure inheritance after a blowout with his parents. Another time, I heard he lived off the grid and built encryption software for intelligence contractors. Truth was, no one ever really knew what happened to him. Until now. I looked from my aunt, who was still holding the trust letter like it was a declaration of war, to Eli, who was now slowly walking up my driveway, calm as a tide. Hey, Jules, he said simply. Eli. I replied, my voice quiet, unsure. I thought you were gone. He smiled slightly. I was. Until now. My aunt stepped back instinctively, clearly uneasy. She opened her mouth like she was about to say something, but Eli held up a hand, not rudely, but firmly. Then he looked at me again. We should talk. Alone. I nodded and stepped aside. My aunt made a disapproving sound in her throat, but didn't say anything. She hovered on the steps for a moment longer before finally muttering, "This isn't over," and walking back toward her car. When the door closed behind us, Eli walked straight to my kitchen like he'd been here 1,000 times. He sat down, hands folded. I followed, heart thudding with confusion. "You're probably wondering why I'm here," he said. Yeah, that's one way to put it." He leaned forward. "I've been watching from a distance, Julian. For a long time. I know what's been happening." My mind raced. "You've been watching?" He nodded. "After I cut ties with the family, I stayed away. But I never really stopped paying attention. Quiet monitoring. Social media, legal filings, even that family trust you set up. I saw who benefited. I saw how they used you, how they drained you." I blinked. "You tracked all that?" "I work in intelligence infrastructure now," he said matter-of-factly. "It's not hard, especially when you care." There was something oddly comforting in the way he said that last part. Like I wasn't crazy for feeling used. Like someone else had noticed it too, and hadn't just dismissed it as family drama. Eli reached into his coat and pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the table. "I've compiled everything," he said. "Every transaction tied to your accounts over the last 5 years. Not just Marissa's. Everyone's." My blood ran cold. "You're kidding." "Nope," he said. And I didn't stop there. I traced funds from the trust that were funneled into personal Venmo accounts, unauthorized Zelle transfers, even Cash Apps disguised under fake names. Some of them siphoned off money while claiming they didn't know how to access the account. You were too trusting. You thought you were helping. But they saw it as an opportunity. I scrolled through the files, dozens of line items, names, dates, screenshots. Payments I barely remembered. Debts I'd quietly paid off without a thank you. Gift cards sent for birthdays, tuition advances, hospital bills, wedding costs. It went on and on. Some of the names stung more than others. Cara, Marissa, even my mom. I felt sick. How much?" I asked. Eli exhaled. "Conservatively, just over $217,000. I dropped the tablet like it was on fire. "You've got to be kidding me." Eli shook his head. "I wish I was." For a long time, we sat in silence. The only sound was the faint hum of the fridge. When I finally spoke again, my voice was hoarse. "So what do I do?" Eli leaned back, crossing his arms. "That depends. You want to walk away clean? Cut all ties? I can help you do that. Revoke power of attorney from your mom. Legally close the trust. Change your account structure so no one, even if they try, can get access. I can even help you move your assets overseas if you want to make it permanent." I stared at him, heart pounding. "And if I don't?" He tilted his head. "Then we go scorched earth." I narrowed my eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said slowly, "we let them see what it's like to be exposed. Publicly. The misuse of trust funds? It's not just unethical. In some cases, it's borderline criminal, especially with how they accessed it. You want them to understand the consequences? I've got enough evidence to make that happen, and I'm willing to help you file it." My throat went dry. A part of me wanted to say yes, to let it all burn, to make them pay for every time they call me selfish, every time they treated my generosity like an obligation, every time they laughed behind my back and said I only did it because I needed to feel important. But another part of me hesitated, because despite everything, they were still my family. Wounded and warped, yes, but mine. And somewhere in that mess of old memories and new betrayal, I still remembered birthdays, Sunday dinners, shared jokes. I still remembered Marissa holding my hand when I broke my arm at 9. I remembered Cara sneaking me candy after Mom grounded me. I remembered. "Julian," Eli said, breaking my thoughts, "you don't have to decide right now. But they're coming for you. Not with knives, but with tears. With guilt. With that word they think solves everything. Family." He stood up. "And when they do, I want you to ask yourself something." I looked up at him. "Are they worth saving if they never once tried to save you?" With that, he walked to the door. I didn't move. Didn't say a word. The door clicked shut behind him. And within 5 minutes, my phone buzzed again. It was a voice memo from my mom. "Julian, please. I think we all need to come together and talk about this. You're hurting people. And for what? Money? Is that all we are to you now? I stared at the screen. No reply. Not yet. Because I knew, deep down, this wasn't about money at all. It was about value. And I was finally starting to wonder if they ever saw mine in the first place. I didn't respond to the voice memo that night. Instead, I sat at my desk, staring at the screen until the sun peeked through the blinds. Eli's words echoed in my head. Are they worth saving if they never once tried to save you? It haunted me because I knew the answer, but I hated that I did. I didn't want to be the guy who burned bridges. I didn't want to be the cold-hearted one, but I also didn't want to keep being the family punching bag. The next morning, I took a long walk. No phone, no earbuds, just silence. And by the time I made it back home, the decision had settled into me like a deep breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I picked up the phone and called Eli. I want to do it, I said, but not out of spite, out of necessity. Understood, he replied calmly. I'll be there in an hour. When he arrived, we went through everything again. The trust, the accounts, the records, every single document that tied my finances to my family. And then, piece by piece, we started cutting the cords. By noon, I had revoked power of attorney from my mother, removed all beneficiaries from the family trust, and began closing the auxiliary accounts that had quietly leaked money for years. Eli helped me secure everything behind layers of encryption and limited access. The trust wasn't dissolved entirely. I couldn't bring myself to do that, but I placed it under strict lock and freeze. No one would see a dime without direct court-verified approval. Next, Eli filed a report. It wasn't a lawsuit, not yet, but it was a formal complaint to the state attorney's office outlining unauthorized usage of funds under a family-managed account. We submitted every screenshot, every receipt, every text where they casually admitted to borrowing from me. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. But, as expected, the fallout came quickly and violently. That evening, Kara showed up at my door. She didn't knock. She banged, like the house owed her something. When I opened it, she barged in without asking. You filed a complaint? She snapped. You seriously filed a legal complaint? Do you even realize what you're doing to Mom? I closed the door behind her slowly. I'm holding people accountable. She turned to face me, eyes wild. For what? For needing help? For accepting help you offered. I never offered $200 concert tickets, Kara. I never offered spa weekends. I never offered abuse. You're twisting this, she cried. You were always the golden boy, and now you want to punish the rest of us for being human. No, I said quietly. I want to stop being punished for being generous. She froze, and for the first time, I think she actually heard it. Not the words, but the exhaustion in my voice. I walked past her, picked up a folder from the kitchen counter, and handed it to her. Here, I said, a detailed breakdown of every cent that's passed from me to you over the last 6 years. She took it, confused, flipping through it with shaking hands. Tuition payments, rent contributions, grocery bills, car repairs, phone bills, birthday gifts. She read in silence until she reached the final page. The total was over $72,000. She looked up at me, her expression unreadable. I didn't know it was that much, she whispered. That's the problem, I said. You didn't want to. She blinked back tears, but I didn't move to comfort her. She stood there for a moment, then set the folder down carefully. I didn't come here for money, she said. I came to ask you to talk to Mom. She's scared. I'm sure she is, I said. She should be. She's your mother, Julian. And I was her son when she told me I owed it to the family to keep giving. When she told me I was being selfish for saying no. When she guilted me for having boundaries. Do you want us to beg? She snapped suddenly. Is that what this is about? You want us crawling? No, I said, walking to the door. I want you to see me. Not just the wallet. Me. She walked out without saying goodbye. The next day, my mother called. She didn't start with hello. Just, I heard from Kara. I figured. A pause. Then, you really think I used you? I stayed quiet. Julian, I raised you. I cleaned your scraped knees. I stayed up with you during your night terrors. I made you soup when you had the flu. And I never forgot any of that, I said. But love doesn't mean financial servitude, Mom. You raised me. That doesn't entitle you to everything I have now. You're not the only one who's struggled, she hissed. We all sacrificed. And I never asked you to pay me back, I replied. But you never stop asking me. That's the difference. Another pause. Then her voice changed. Smaller. So this is it. You're cutting us all off. No, I said. I'm giving you the chance to learn how to stand without leaning on me. She didn't respond. We ended the call shortly after. Weeks passed. The chat remained quiet. No memes. No jokes. Just silence. But then, something shifted. One afternoon, I got a letter. Not an envelope. An actual, old-school, handwritten letter. From Marissa. Julian. I've been thinking a lot. I was angry when everything happened. Embarrassed. And I wanted to lash out because it was easier than looking at myself. But I've been reading, learning. I even started a financial literacy course online. I used to think you were just showing off, but now I see you were trying to do things the right way. I abused your trust. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but I do hope someday we can sit down and talk again. Maybe even as equals. Marissa. I read it 3 times. It didn't erase what she'd done, but it was a start. That weekend, I invited Eli over again. We sat on my porch, coffee in hand, watching the city lights shimmer below us. You did it, he said. I did, I nodded. Not perfectly, but I did. He smiled. So what now? I looked out across the skyline, exhaled deeply, and said, now I live my life, without carrying theirs too. And for the first time in a long time, I felt weightless. Not because I'd cut them off, but because I'd finally let go of the guilt, the burden, the silent expectation. And in that space, for the first time in years, I had room to just be me. Alone, free, and finally seen.